Good afternoon, everyone. Illinois Extension is happy to have you back on for an update via another BEAD Challenge Lunch and Learn. And we welcome back Devon Braunstein from the Illinois Office of Broadband, as well as Shubhika Agarwal from the Illinois Broadband Lab. They will provide a summary of the challenge phase along with some takeaways and give us an idea of what's to come with the rebuttal process. We thank them both for this information and ongoing assistance with Illinois communities across the state as they prepare for BEAD funding opportunities. Again, we thank you both, Shubhika and Devon, and without further hesitation, I pass it over to you now, Devon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nancy, as always, for helping us host these webinars, and great to see everyone. I was sharing before, I know we had a little hiatus, so appreciate everyone's patience as the team has been busy reviewing over 190,000 challenges received. So let's dive into our webinar for today. We'll do a recap and timeline of the challenge process like we usually start with. Then we'll go through some highlights from the challenge phase. So these are some new summary statistics of sort of what we've been seeing so far. And then for the bulk of our time today, and hopefully, this is important new information for all of you, we will be diving into the rebuttal phase, including who can participate, how can you participate, what can be rebutted, area and MDU rebuttals, and what evidence do you need? And then we will go through next steps. A couple of objectives. So by the end of this webinar, we hope that you'll be familiar with highlights from the challenge phase and understand the rebuttal phase, when it occurs, and how you can participate. All right, so we will start with our BEAD challenge process recap. Just to frame on what is BEAD, it's the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. So Illinois has been awarded $1.04 billion to connect all unserved and underserved locations to broadband over the next 5 years. As we move through this challenge process, we are getting closer and closer to starting our sub-grantee process and making awards in the next year plus. Here's our timeline. So you can see we finished pre-registration, publication of eligible locations, and the challenge phase. The challenge phase is when we accepted challenges from all of you, and that was between February 27th and March 18th. So we accepted challenges through our challenge portal. Then the challenge phase closed, and we entered the challenge validation phase, which we are on the tail end of now. So I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing, but at the highest level, the Office of Broadband has a team of reviewers who have been going through every challenge and reviewing them for a minimum level of evidence. Every challenge will be given a status. And then at the start of the rebuttal phase on April 16th, all of the challenges will be posted with basic summary information about them publicly for folks' review. And this will initiate the rebuttal process, where certain groups based on the challenge type can review what was challenged and then submit a rebuttal with corresponding evidence should they want to do so. So this is up next. And then following the rebuttal phase, which is 21 days, we'll enter the final phase, which is called adjudication. So we look at the challenges submitted, the rebuttal evidence, and we make a final call on what we believe to be the most accurate representation of connectivity or the status of every location on our map. Then we submit this information to NTIA, who issues final approval, and this helps us get the green light and get going on our sub-grantee process. This should be review for everyone at this point, but a quick recap: what is the challenge process? This is something that every state is required to undergo to access the BEAD dollars. So overall, it's our process to get the broadband map right. We published a set of availability and connectivity data for the public's review, and then accepted challenges, corrections, disputes to this map, with the ultimate goal of getting to as accurate a picture of broadband connectivity across the state as we can. So when we allocate and prioritize those BEAD dollars, we are doing so in a way that gets us to that universal connectivity statewide. Our key terms and definitions: every location is called a BSL, or a broadband serviceable location, like a business or a house. Unserved, underserved, and served are the three classifications of locations based on the speed that's available. So there's three thresholds: A location is underserved if it doesn't have any connectivity up to just under 25/3 megabits per second. A location is underserved if it has between 25/3 and 100/20 Mbps. And if it has 100/20 or higher, it is considered served by the standards of this program. A community anchor institution is like a school, a library, or an organization that falls under our definition of a community support organization. A multi-dwelling unit is a big apartment building with at least 2 units. And latency is a measure of our internet quality, the time it takes data to go to a server and back to your connection. So good latency is lower than 100 milliseconds. So what have folks challenged? We had kind of 3 buckets of challenges here. The first is related to broadband serviceable locations. So we received challenges on availability, speed, latency. We actually did not receive any data cap challenges. Technology and business service only we did receive. We also heard from providers about planned or existing service and enforceable commitments. And then we also received challenges to community anchor institutions telling us this is a community anchor institution and thus should be characterized as such, or this is actually, closed down or turned into a commercial space, so it is no longer a CAI. So that's our overview. If you have any questions about the basics or you are new to this group, don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat and we will cover them towards the end of the session. So now we'll move on to our second segment of today, which is challenge phase highlights. So again, all of this is subject to change slightly as we're finalizing, cleaning, and validating all of the challenge data. But I'm really excited to share some highlights now just to kind of read you in on what we actually received during the challenge phase. So we received more than 190,000 unique challenges across 160,000 unique locations. I will flag on the dashboard, you might see a number closer to 230,000. This is because as folks improve their evidence, they may have resubmitted, causing duplicates or challenges to be withdrawn. So after some data cleaning was done, we are just above 190,000 challenges. Some key dates to recognize: March 18th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time marked the end of the challenge phase. So that was the last time that you could submit a challenge. And then March 19th through April 15th, this Monday, is our challenge validation phase. This is where we are reviewing the challenges. So what does this look like? All challenges are being reviewed by a team of 15 non-biased reviewers who are committed to protecting confidential information and achieving as accurate of a map as possible. We want BEAD dollars to go as far as they can, but we're trying to be really comprehensive in these reviews of evidence to make sure that no communities are left behind. Per NTIA requirements, each challenge's evidence is reviewed for a minimum level of evidence, or MLE. Those that meet the MLE will be passed along to the rebuttal phase. Those that don't meet the MLE will be considered incomplete, so won't make it to the next phase. And all of these statuses will be reflected publicly on the dashboard on April 16th. Sometimes there was clarification needed to effectively evaluate more complex, larger, more technical submissions. So the office conducted outreach or asked questions to challengers. So if you heard from us on this call, we are just appreciative of your patience and your willingness to provide follow-up information, because again, the end goal is making sure that the evaluation of each challenge gets us to as accurate of a map as possible. We are almost there, and so just thank you for your patience as we are figuring this out ourselves as well. What's next? So we are in the final days of our review, getting everything cleaned up, updating statuses, and preparing to publish all of those statuses on our dashboard on April 16th. So I have a couple of slides now on summary statistics, so just kind of some interesting questions answered. First one here is who participated. So we had a total of 132 unique challengers. And this across our 3 groups was broken down by broadband provider. There were 92 ISPs who submitted challenges. Nonprofits, including CBOs and anchor institutions, 22 participated, and 18 government organizations. And I just want to take a moment here and really celebrate the folks who participated. I know especially nonprofits and government entities who may have been new to this process, new to some of these terms. Just thank you for taking the time and patience to work with us. We really appreciate it, and I think it will make our map much stronger thanks to your local perspective. So the number of challenges submitted by organization type, we have 175,324 from broadband providers. A lot of these were, big pieces of the state, which you'll have a chance to see and rebut should you choose in the coming week. Nonprofits submitted over 16,000, and government organizations submitted 442. So this brings us to a total of 191,878 challenges submitted. And this slide looks at the breakdown by type. So the biggest type that we have is plan service. This makes up 75% of the challenges submitted, with availability following right behind at 14% or 27,000. This was followed by business service only, then enforceable commitments. Location is a CAI, speed, and then a couple more towards the bottom. All right. So again, happy to take questions and answer what I can at the end. And we'll move on to our next section called the rebuttal phase. And if you give me 2 seconds, I'm just going to turn my lights back on. Thanks for your patience. Okay. So we are entering the third big phase of the challenge process called the rebuttal phase. We've been, busy over the past couple of weeks reviewing your challenges. I know some folks have been responding to questions. Some folks may have had a little lull in participating. So engagement should ramp up again on April 16th. So get ready. What is the rebuttal phase? So during this phase, challenged entities will be notified of challenges levied against their service and are invited to submit a rebuttal with supporting evidence to dispute the claim should they want to do so. All challenges received will be posted with their status on the challenge dashboard. And we say status, it will be something like the challenge was accepted, it met the MLE, or it was not valid, it was incomplete. There will also be a set of challenges eligible for open rebuttal, which can be rebutted by more like the general public. So any eligible challenger, like a nonprofit, a unit of local government, or an internet service provider. When does the challenge process take place? So this is, again, a 21-day phase starting on April 16th through May 5th. Internet service providers will receive their challenges directly, and then there will be an open rebuttal form for anyone else who is eligible to participate. Who can participate? Any eligible challenger, so kind of our same universe here. But this depends on the type of challenge that kind of dictates how and who can participate. So I'll go into that next. So I think this table will be the best way to kind of internalize who can participate in what way. The first group here is internet service providers. So if someone challenged anything related to service, availability, and quality at a location, those challenges go directly to the internet service provider, who has the opportunity to submit a rebuttal, accept that challenge, or take no action. The challenge types that fall in this category are availability, latency, data cap, speed, technology, and business service only. So again, these are sort of pieces that only the ISP will have an opportunity to rebut. How this will work is we have a contact person from most ISPs. If you have not shared or confirmed a contact person and you are an ISP on this call, please email me. These individuals will be given access to the portal, and they'll be notified whether they received a challenge against their service, be invited to log into the portal, and then respond with evidence to each submission. The second group here is any eligible challenger. So nonprofits, units of local government, and internet service providers can rebut the following challenge types. Planned or existing service. So if an internet service provider offered us evidence that they will be covering a certain number of households, you'll have the chance to rebut that if you have evidence otherwise. Similarly, with enforceable commitment, location is a CAI or location is not a CAI. Everyone must be pre-registered. I think if you're on this call, it's very likely that you are already pre-registered, but we will have this open on a rolling basis through the rebuttal process. So you'll be able to complete that form, pre-register, and that just helps us verify who you are on the back end. How will this happen? On our dashboard, we'll have all challenges posted, and those that are eligible for open rebuttal will have a link to a form where you can submit a sort of one-off single rebuttal with evidence, or there will be a different form for a bulk rebuttal if you'd like to rebut a sort of broader geographic region. So first we'll go through, for internet service providers or ISP, what is the process to review challenges levied against your service? You'll first receive an email from the Office of Broadband telling you that you have received challenges, and to look out for an email from verification@ilbroadbandmapping.org, which you'll receive and then be prompted to log in and view your challenges. For each submission, there may be one or more challenges a part of it. You can review the evidence, you can review the details, and then opt to rebut, uploading evidence yourself. You can accept it as true, or you can take no action, and this results in challenge acceptance. You can change the status of rebuttals throughout the rebuttal phase. So if you mark it as one thing and you change your mind, or you have additional evidence to include, that is something that can be edited, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like in a second. So this is what it will look like, subject to change slightly as we're refining this ahead of the 16th, but mostly will look something like this. So you'll enter that same portal that you use to submit challenges. You'll click on rebuttal opportunities on the left-hand side, and then you'll view all of the submissions that challenged your service. Each row is a submission, and you can see the number of locations or CAIs in that submission. You can download evidence, export data as a CSV, or click respond to make that decision. So this is what that form looks like if you want to rebut the challenge. You see here, you can leave notes and upload evidence. And if you want to accept the challenge, pretty simple, doesn't require anything other than marking it as accepted. Again, you can see the sort of past actions that you've taken and make changes through the end of the challenge phase on May 6th. Got to update this. The end of the challenge phase is on May 6th. Two other pieces here are area and MDU challenges. So an area challenge is triggered if 6 or more broadband serviceable locations using a particular technology and provider within one census block group are successfully challenged. It will trigger an area challenge. An MDU challenge is triggered if within the same location there's a successful challenge that shares a provider, a challenge type, and a technology type. And we have different thresholds here. So if there's one successful challenge in an MDU between 2 and 15 units, it'll trigger an MDU challenge. The same goes for 2 units within a 16 to 24 unit building, and 3 units within a 25 or greater unit building. So what happens if an area or MDU challenge is triggered? The burden of proof is then placed on the broadband provider to demonstrate that they meet the requirements and can provide the challenge service for all locations they serve within the area or all units within an MDU. So you will receive a form that shows you, that indicates which census block groups and locations are challenged or have qualified for an area or an MDU challenge, and you'll have the opportunity to submit a rebuttal should you choose through a form. So There is some detail laid out in our user guide and in our initial proposal volume 1, and happy to kind of workshop this in office hours. But at the highest level, area challenges related to the availability have to be rebutted in entirely or by location with evidence that service is available for all broadband serviceable locations within the census block group. So this could be a network diagram, a shapefile, a KMZ, or subscriber information, so documentation of subscriber bills from each of those locations. For fixed wireless service, we're looking for a representative sample of the area where the provider must demonstrate service availability and speed, and this has to be a representative random sample. And again, we'll be offering a form to kind of upload any sort of area or MDU challenge evidence. MDU challenges. So if a challenge triggers an MDU challenge, what we'll need to see is that inside wiring reaches all units and is of sufficient quality to support the claimed level of service. You can provide speed tests, and there's some details here on that. And again, you'll be able to upload this via a form. So shifting gears, what we were just talking about was internet service providers whose service was challenged directly. Now we're shifting gears towards internet service providers and other challengers who have submitted planned or existing service challenge types, enforceable commitments, and CAI challenges. So these are considered eligible for what we're calling open rebuttal, meaning any eligible challenger can rebut them. So everything will be available on our dashboard. And if a challenge is eligible for open rebuttal, you'll see, if you see on the bottom right-hand corner here, a form that says submit an open rebuttal. This will generate a simple form, and it'll ask you for your email, an explanation and evidence, and some information about yourself. It'll automatically carry over the challenge ID from the map, so you don't need to fill that in. And there's some explanation up top on how to use this form. We'll also have the opportunity to do bulk rebuttals. So if you know that you want to rebut a certain region or town, certain area, and you don't want to click every single form lots of times, there is a separate opportunity for bulk open rebuttals. So this is a preview of the form. Again, you'll fill in your organization, name, email, challenge type, provider, and technology of the challenge that you are rebutting. And then you can sort of narrow it down by county and then city optionally. So this will be a type ahead once you start typing. The counties and cities will fill in. We'll ask you for an explanation and then evidence. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Shubhika to walk us through the examples of evidence.
Great, thanks, Devon. So I think with this phase, again, there is requirements on the type of evidence that we would accept for each of the different types of challenges. So as you're, preparing, or because the dashboard's still live, you kind of have a sense of what came in. It might look a little different, as Devon mentioned, after we completed with the initial validation of all the work. But let's start with availability challenge. So this is when there is a challenge that the service that's actually reported is not offered at that location. So the permissible rebuttal, and this would be eligible for ISPs. So they could either show that they have an active subscriber at that location. On the right, we have an evidence of a subscriber bill that can be shared. It could be a revised screenshot of the website, if that was the piece of evidence that was shared, which shows that they actually provide service at that location. Or this could be another sort of example showing that service is now available, which was communicated through an offer letter sent to the locations. Again, we have like example of a pamphlet that shows that service is now available and at what speeds. So those are the different types of evidence that can be shared to rebut an availability challenge. Moving on to speed and latency. So again, this would be when there is a challenge that the reported speeds are not actually matching with the experience of the challenger. So in this case, if the provider is able to share countervailing speed test from their network management system, that would be the one. Again, we have an example of a speed test that shows the download and upload speeds available at that location. And if it's a latency challenge, then that would be the one that is able to show that it is less than 100 millisecond for that specific location. For a technology challenge, so again, the evidence that a lot of this is if there's a countervailing evidence for, like, what is reported in the map is accurate. So if the ISP is able to share that they can, in fact, provide service through that reported technology, and they have an appropriate residential gateway that matches that particular type of service, that would be a good piece of evidence here. Again, we have an example on the right that shows what that could look like. For business service only, this is when the location is residential, or the service reported may be residential, and the challenger says that the website or the provider is only able to provide business service and they're not able to subscribe to that service. So in this case, again, if the ISP has documentation that they can actually provide residential service, that would be a good piece of evidence. And again, a website screenshot, as we have as an example here, that could be a good piece of evidence. Again, the evidence specifically for CAI challenges. So speed test for CAIs, again, looks similar. The threshold here is different for CAIs. They should be able to access gigabit symmetrical speeds. So if there is a speed test challenge from a CAI, then the rebuttal evidence should actually include speed tests from the provider that can show that they can provide gigabit symmetric or more to that specific CAI. Availability challenges for CAIs, again, it's just that this is not a BSL, this is going to be for a CAI, but the permissible evidence pieces is similar to what we have already discussed for availability challenges. Moving on to the next type. So now this is moving to the open rebuttal side of things. So if you are a local government, nonprofit, or even an ISP who's wanting to share a rebuttal for all of the other types that we are now going to discuss, these are the different pieces of evidence that you can share for the rebuttal phase. So for enforceable commitment, this is where the challenge will say that an ISP has reported that they will be covering those specific locations as part of an enforceable commitment program, meaning a state or federal grant program for broadband deployment. So if you have information or documentation that can prove that they have defaulted on that commitment already, or there is proof that they are unable to meet that commitment due to XYZ reasons, maybe some sort of communication that your county might have personally had with them, or in an example here, we have like FCC News, which kind of shows the defaulters for a specific grant program. So those would be permissible evidence for this kind of a rebuttal. For planned service, this is when an ISP would have reported that they are going to be deploying infrastructure at those locations by June 30th, 2024. So again, if there is documentation showing that they're no longer able to meet that commitment, or the technology and speeds that they're deploying at that location do not meet BEAD requirements, that would be a good piece of evidence. The screenshot here shows the agreement, and that might have specifics on the technology, which might not meet BEAD requirements. So again, that could be, that's one of the examples shared on the slide here. For not part of an enforceable commitment, so this is not open for rebuttal just generally, because this is when an ISP who was initially reported on the map to cover certain locations as part of an enforceable commitment let us know that some of these locations on the fringes are actually not part of their enforceable commitment, and so this is not going to be open to rebuttal. The office is going to review the initial evidence that was submitted as part of these challenges and will make a decision decision on whether or not they are valid challenges. For location as a CAI, so again, we received quite a few of these. Definitely want to perfect the map for CAIs in the state and make sure that they have access to gigabit symmetric service. So this would mean that the challenge says that the location should be classified as a CAI, and permissible rebuttal here would be an evidence that can show that this specific location does not fall into the definitions of a CAI as laid out in the state's initial proposal. So again, a screenshot that this is in fact a residential location or a small business that's not really a CAI. So that is an example evidence that we have on here. And lastly, location is not a CAI. So this is when we had categorized a certain location as a CAI and we received feedback that it should not be considered as a CAI based on our definitions. So if there is, again, countervailing evidence that it falls within the definitions and, a website screenshot or a Google Maps screenshot that can help validate that would be permissible for such a rebuttal. Awesome. So that was all the rebuttal evidence that you can gather as you are preparing for the next phase.
Thanks, Shubhika. So we'll sort of finalize that and make sure that the guide is published for your reference. We'll post it on the website and likely the dashboard and portal as well. Going forward, once the rebuttal phase starts, we'll have office hours twice a week, similar to how we did during the challenge phase. This will be Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 to 2 p.m. A couple other resources, we have our challenge process user guide and our landing page, which we are updating to kind of reflect the latest processes and resources related to the rebuttal phase. So a couple of next steps before we open it up for questions. Again, if you have not pre-registered before and you believe you want to participate in the rebuttal phase, we encourage you to pre-register so then we can validate who you are and make sure that we're reviewing your submissions properly. The rebuttal phase will be open from April 16th through May 6th. And then our website will have the latest. We are not doing these webinars weekly because there isn't too much new information to share. But I think as new information or needs come up, we will schedule them and make sure that all of you are aware of them. So I would suggest we're happy to cover questions here, and then office hours will be the place where we can kind of troubleshoot any issues, review evidence, and give feedback on that, and so on and so forth. And so with that, we can pause here for any questions. And I'll take a look at the chat for starters. So the first question is, for open rebuttal, will we be able to search by county? Yes. The map allows you to search for an address, a town, a county, and then you can see challenges submitted in that area. And then if you do choose to participate in a bulk open rebuttal, you can rebut certain challenges in an entire town or county. Is there a way to see which BSL submitted individual speed test challenges? So you can see that right now by looking at the map, and anything that says a speed challenge. I guess some of the speed challenges on the map will be from BEADchallenge.org. We're currently reviewing those, and then you'll see the status is reflected on the dashboard to see sort of the result of whether they met the minimum level of evidence and so on. I received a question, when the IOB is published, will it be on the DCEO BEAD website? I'm not sure what the IOB is, but just inferring if you're asking about the dashboard or the status of the challenges, yes, those will be on the website. The dashboard is currently up and live, so I would bookmark that and check back on April 16th for sort of the results of the challenge phase. And I can pull that link right now. Any other questions? If challenge submissions aren't appearing on the dashboard, does that mean that they haven't been reviewed yet? So all submissions should be on the dashboard in a static format of under review. If you don't see something on the dashboard, it might be like a bug on our end, or we can just kind of double check the filtering. So shoot me an email with what you are not seeing and we can look into it. And I'll put the dashboard in the chat.
Thank you, Devon and Shubhika. We still have quite a bit of time, 20 minutes left or so. So willing to keep you on. We're very grateful for the update today.
Maybe just one final note to help simplify what I know is a bit of a complicated process. The evidence that goes along with the rebuttal, consider it like the opposite of the challenge evidence. So for CAI, if evidence says something is not a CAI, then your rebuttal evidence will show that it is, and vice versa. But we'll publish that evidence guide and make sure that you have time to kind of digest it and share out with your communities or whoever else might want to participate in the rebuttal process. Seeing a question, is there a way to download all rebuttal opportunities shown on the dashboard at once? That is a great question. I think we can look into that if that would be helpful. We are slightly limited by the combination of location ID, address, and lat long that we can publish based on the sort of policies of our licenses. But I think in some capacity, we may be able to make the data downloadable. So maybe feel free to shoot me an email so we can look into that. All right, well, I think we can give everyone some time back and just thank you again for engaging in this process. It's really neat to see how many people participated, submitted quality challenges. So just appreciative of your time and look forward to seeing your rebuttals. Oh, we got more questions. Have we had any ISPs challenge CAIs? This is something I'll encourage you to look at the dashboard on the 16th. I don't want to speak before everything is finalized. Can you do a full explanation of what enforceable commitment means? What is the ISP expectation there? So Shubhika, do you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So with enforceable commitment, there's really two parts to it, the state and the federal side. So starting off with the federal commitment, so there have been these previous grant programs for broadband deployment as well. So if there are those program areas that have been funded to meet BEAD requirements, so like, they're going to be deploying greater than 100 by 20 speeds with the reliable technology guidelines for BEAD, then those would not be eligible for BEAD funding. So they are categorized as served as part of the enforceable commitments. And because all of these different programs have different deadlines for when the infrastructure has to be deployed, it's going to be program specific based on, what program your specific location is covered under. To get a sense of the different programs that are basically captured as part of federal enforceable commitments, there's the National Broadband Funding Map that lists all of those different programs from the federal agencies who have funded those programs in the past. So that's the federal side of things. And then there's the state enforceable commitment. So any of those locations that have received prior Connect-Illinois funding. So those are a majority of the ones we do not want to be duplicating funding in those areas. So they will also be marked as served with the round 1 of Connect Illinois. All of those are completed, so they should already have service. For the second round of Connect Illinois, some of them are still in progress, and there's like a 2-year timeline for Connect Illinois deployment, so that, yeah, we know for sure that after we make those grand decisions, those locations will have service in the next 2 years. If there's like specific areas you're looking at, or if you have specific questions about, you know, what's reported for your area and what program that falls under, we have the BEAD challenge map that shows whether or not locations have been reported as having enforceable commitments. So you can take a look at that, and if you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to us. So I see a follow-up question. Guess my question is, what is the consequence if an ISP is not reaching the agreed service level, but since they did get funded, those locations are not eligible now? So this is a good question. I think this is something that NTIA and also understands with, like, you know, how the program is set out. There might be defaults and all of that happening with some of the prior grant programs. So we will certainly not be able to like foresee that right now. But it would potentially have to be another program in the future that funds them. Hopefully we don't have a lot of those. But yeah, if they currently are covered through a specific program, they will not be, and also meet BEAD requirements, they will not be able to be funded through BEAD.
And those are NTIA requirements that we're required to follow as part of the BEAD funding. So we're collecting all of the documentation that we can to do what we can to make sure that it is not the case that projects, you know, default or fail. So at the end of the day, we're doing what we can while also following the NTIA requirements to implement BEAD. All right, any final questions?
I think there's one more question from David for enforceable commitment and planned service rebuttals. If there is no clear document available, can we submit explanations of why we believe a rebuttal is warranted?
So I think for planned service and existing service, I would point you to the evidence guide that we walk through. And again, in office hours, we can kind of troubleshoot together how that best applies to you. But for example, if a provider says that they are providing service to a location and you have proof of them saying that they can't provide you service, or a speed test saying that they don't provide a certain level of service, that's probably going to be the most compelling evidence to rebut their challenge. So again, we can kind of walk through specific examples together.
But I think just generally an explanation by itself might not be sufficient, because as we are validating a lot of these challenges, we've made sure that we have that minimum level of evidence from the provider itself who's submitting these challenges. So if there's a rebuttal, we'd want a little more than just an explanation, so that we have a solid reason for actually not accepting that challenge during final adjudication. So yeah, as Devon mentioned, certainly happy to like discuss specifics of what that might be for different counties and organizations.
Great. All right. Well, I think with that, we can close out. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll send out the slides, the recording, and helpful links. And if you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out to one of us or broadband@illinois.gov, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you, Devon and Shubhika.